How to do, folks? It's your old Uncle Jason here to drop some deep truth on you. I finally found a book that was gonna be used for this little segment, and it's called Conquer Your Negative Thoughts by Daniel G. Amen, MD. Now, I've said a lot of times that you need to change your mind, you need to change how you think, you need to change this, that, and the other thing. But the one thing I definitely have not done is giving you some information on exactly how to do that. Bible says it starts with the renewing of your mind. Now, this is in no wise a medical opinion. It is in no wise a diagnosis. It is just simply an opinion and a message that I'm delivering as your internet pastor. I'm going to give you said information, which I think is good and will definitely help you. If you feel that you're in crisis, make sure you reach out for help. Dial 911 or whatever your local emergency number is. In America, it's 911. So I assure you, I'm not trying to dissuade you from going to see a doctor. If you need to go to see a doctor, you go see a doctor. I can't believe that I've got to say that, but unfortunately, if I don't, somebody somewhere is going to take me out of context. So, there it is. There's your disclaimer. So let's get into it. Chapter 1. Understanding your negative thoughts. Dark thoughts in the mind are not you, but are false messages from the brain. And because you are not your brain, you don't have to listen to them. Jeffrey M. Schwartz, MD, author of You Are Not Your Brain. It had been a really tough day at the office. I had seen 4 suicidal patients, 2 teens who had run away from home, 2 couples who hated each other. As if this wasn't bad enough, that evening when I arrived home and walked into the kitchen, I was greeted by an ant infestation. The little critters were everywhere, coming out of the light sockets and spaces between the flooring and the walls. I even found ants in the pantry crawling into the cereal boxes. Construction in our neighborhood had disturbed the earth, and the ants were looking for a new residence. Apparently, word had gotten out to a sizable ant colony that the pickings were good in the Amen home. As I wet paper towels and began wiping up the horde of ants, the acronym ANT came to me. Automatic Negative Thoughts. Acronyms had been part of my life since medical school, helping remember the 50,000 new terms I was learning. As I thought about my patients that day, I realized that, just like my kitchen, they were also infested with ants that were robbing them of their joy and stealing their happiness. A bizarre image came to me of ants crawling on the top of their heads and out their eyes, noses, and ears. The ants were setting up residence inside my patients' minds. The next day, I brought a can of ant spray to work and placed it on my coffee table. As I started to talk about the concept with my patients, they understood it right away. Think of automatic negative thoughts as you would the ants that might bother a couple in a romantic picnic. One negative thought, like one ant at a picnic, is not a big problem. 2 or 3 automatic negative thoughts, like 2 or 3 ants at a picnic, become a little more irritating. 20 or 30 automatic negative thoughts, like 20 or 30 ants at a picnic, may cause the couple to pick up and leave. The more you allow the ants to stick around in your head, the more they will, quote, mate with other ants and produce offspring that drive school failure, anxiety, depression, anger, work strife, relationship turmoil, and even obesity. The 9 different ant species, and this is the next section of the book. About 10 years ago, the parents of 14-year-old Marcus brought him to see me because he was struggling with schoolwork and with his temper. At his previous school, Marcus, quote, barely had to try to get good grades. But after moving to a new school for the athletics, he found the more academically rigorous program challenging and his grades declined. He had trouble focusing, was easily distracted, procrastinated, and took longer to complete assignments than ever before. A prior psychologist diagnosed him with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, but the stimulant medications Ritalin and Adderall made him angry and more depressed. And for the first time, he started to complain of suicidal thoughts. When I met Marcus, it was clear he was struggling with many negative thoughts. He repeatedly referred to himself as stupid, and during our first session, he told me, "I hate school. I can never be as good as other kids. I'm a terrible person. I should try harder. I'm not as smart as other kids. I'll never go to college. I am a failure. My teachers hate me. It's my parents' fault for not letting me quit." Over the years, therapists have identified 9 different types of negative thought patterns that keep your mind off balance. I think of these as species of ants. They go by various names, but these are the ones I like to use. The first, all or nothing ants. Second, just the bad ants. 3, guilt beating ants. 4, labeling ants. 5, fortune telling ants. 6, mind reading ants. 7, blaming ants. 8, less than ants. 9, if only and I'll be happy when ants. In the course of our conversation, Mark exhibited all of them. Let's take a closer look at each one. All or nothing ants. When Marcus told me I could never be as good as other kids, that was an example of an all or nothing ant. These sneaky ants attack whenever you think things are all good or all bad. They don't use words like sometimes or maybe. These ants think in absolute words that make situations all good or all bad. This is also called black and white thinking, because it splits reality into light and dark, or good or bad, without acknowledging life's complexities and ambiguities and nuances. You know these ants are around whenever you think in words like all, always, any, never, no one, never, nothing, everyone, every time. These ants attack when you believe things are completely right or totally wrong, that people are either friends or enemies, that a day is perfect or terrible, or that you are a total success or a complete failure. These ants tell you that it is now or never, that everything that is not good is bad, that you are beautiful or ugly, and that you love or hate someone, and so on. I once saw the runner-up to the television show The Biggest Loser. He had lost over 100 pounds, yet he was depressed because he saw himself as a complete failure since he did not finish first. He beat out many other contestants and literally lost the weight equivalent to a small adult. All or nothing ants make clear, rigid, and lasting distinctions often based on half-truths or lies. They reduce complex concepts into 2 opposing categories, good or bad. On the surface, these ants make you feel better about yourself because you can put people and actions into simple categories. Just open any political news feed and you'll see pundits putting the other side into all bad category. It's easy to spot all or nothing thinkers as they tend to see only one side of a situation, ignore evidence to the contrary, and get into heated arguments with people who don't share their views. Yet this stinking thinking pattern obscures judgment, leads to bad decisions, decreases one's ability to understand the world, ruins relationship, and reduces the numbers of ways to solve problems. I'm definitely guilty of these. Here's an example. At clinics, we did the first and largest study on active and retired NFL players. More than half of our retired players were obese, which is very bad for the brain. So we ran a weight loss group for athletes. One obese player told me that he was fat because he just didn't like any of the foods that were healthy for him. Is that really true? I asked. You don't like any of them? I then showed him a list of 50 brain healthy foods, and in fact, he liked 60% of them. The all or nothing ants were controlling his food choices and making him fat. Another example, I heard many all or nothing ants from my patients as well as from people on social media while the country was locked down during the COVID-19 pandemic. Here are examples of all or nothing ants, including some of the more common pandemic induced ants I've heard. All of my freedom is being taken from me during the pandemic. We're all going to get COVID. I am not a good father. No one cares about me. Nothing ever works out for me. I am an abject failure. I'm not a good Christian. My boss is taking advantage of me. My husband is the devil incarnate. When we had an argument, I think our relationship is over. I couldn't run a mile. I'll never be an athlete and should just quit working out. I don't want to talk to anyone anymore. My wife never listens to me. I thought I did a good report, but my boss asked me to make a few changes and I can't do nothing right. I'm so bored there's nothing to do. Just to give you a little example of things that we say every day that seem to have been exonerated during that terrible, terrible time of 2020. The next ant, just the bad ants. I always hate school is an example of one of Marcus's just the bad ants. Thousands of years ago, human minds were trained to focus on the negative because it kept people safe. Today, even though lions, tigers, and bears are not likely to eat you, your brain is still primed to pay attention to potential danger, focusing on anything but the positive. To take advantage of our negative tendency, internet marketers feed us non-stop stream of negative news to increase clicks and traffic to their sites. Have you noticed that breaking news is pervasive and never good? Our society is infesting us with just the bad ants. These pesky creatures see only the bad in the situation and ignore anything good. Unless you manage your internet usage, you are swamped with distressing news about terror attacks, political scandals, fires, floods, hurricanes, global warming, mass shootings, murder, suicides, executions, and more. Negative news sells, and since we are always being sold something for the financial gain of others, we are flooded with toxic thoughts. Just the bad ants also zooms their beady eyes in on your mistakes and problems. They fill your head with failure, frustration, sadness, and fear. These ants can take virtually any positive experience and taint it with negativity. They are the judge, jury, and executioner of any new experiences, new relationships, and new habits. Focusing on the negative releases brain chemicals that make you feel bad and that produce brain activity in the prefrontal cortex, that the area involved with self-control, judgment, and planning. This increases the odds of you making bad choices, often as ordering a third drink, eating a bowl full of chips, or staying up so late, updating your social networking site that you wake up exhausted and needing to guzzle caffeine to get going. Some examples of just the bad ants include thoughts like these. The world is more dangerous than ever. I went to the gym and did a hard workout, but the guy on the bike next to me was talking the whole time, so I'm never going back there. I gave a presentation at work, and even though many people told me they loved it, one person fell asleep during my talk, so it must have really been terrible. I only got into college of my second choice. I failed. The economy is never going to get better. I love people who don't love me back. I got together with an old friend, but she showed up 10 minutes late for lunch, so I'm not gonna call her again. I cut back my caffeine intake from 10 cups a day to 2, but I wanted to get down to no coffee by now, so I should just quit trying. I got into our vacation home an hour late and the lights were out. What a disaster. My record debuted at number 2 on the Billboard charts. I'm so disappointed. Our City League baseball team finished second. The whole season was a waste of time. My son got 4 A's on his report card, but also got 2 B's. I'm disappointed. I have, I've been I've been good with my diet all week, but because I cheated on Friday, it ruined everything. Any of this sounding familiar, folks? Because it's sure sounding familiar to me. Guilt-beaten ants. With guilt-beaten ants, motivation comes from moral beatings you receive from others, which as parents and authority figures. You should have done that. You ought to do this. You mustn't think like that ever again. Whenever you think in words like should, must, ought, or have to, your brain is beating you up with guilt. Growing up Roman Catholic and going to Faracol, Parochial, for my Catholic followers, schools through ninth grade, I had to pass Guilt 101 and Advanced Guilt. Only kidding, but should and shouldn't were common words when I was growing up. Of course, there are many important should and shouldn't thoughts, but in my 30 plus years as a psychiatrist, I found that guilt is generally not a helpful motivator of behavior. It often backfires and can be counterproductive to your goals. When Marcus told me he, quote, should try harder in school, that statement didn't help him actually do better. In fact, to Marcus, it seemed like the harder he tried, the worse he performed. Here are some examples of guilt-beaten ants. I'm not a good son because I do not call my dad. I should do better. I should Zoom or FaceTime with my parents more often. I have to give up sugar. I must start counting my calories. I ought to exercise more. I should be more giving. I'm ashamed of the sexual experiences I had as a preteen. I should not have done those things. My struggles are my fault. I should do better. This is also a blaming ant. I'm selfish for seeking help. I shouldn't have to do it. This is also a labeling ant. I should quit because all the work problems are my fault. This is also a blaming ant. I should quit because all the work problems are my fault. This is also a blaming ant. I feel guilty for asking time for myself. I should be able to beat this depression without medicine. I should not have made this move to a new job. I must do better in school. I should be a better wife/husband. I guarantee you some of y'all's thinking the same thing, because I know I have. Labeling ants. Whenever you label yourself or someone else with a negative term, you inhibit your ability to take an honest look at the situation. When Marcus thought I am an idiot, he lumped himself in with all of the people he ever thought were idiots, which damaged his self-esteem and his ability to make progress in his life. Labeling ants strengthen negative pathways in the brain, making the ruts deeper and their walls thicker. These habitual ruts lead to troubled behaviors. If, for example, you label yourself as lazy, then why bother trying to do better in school or at work? The labeling ant will cause you to give up before you try, and it will keep you stuck in your own ways. Examples of labeling ants include: he's a jerk, I'm lazy, I'm a loser, she's cold, I'm a lousy business person, I sound like an idiot, I'm fat, I'm evil because I heard a cat when I was 8, I'm selfish, she's weak, you're weird, you're too gullible, you're a bad son, he's a narcissist. The problem with labeling ants is that they trick you into thinking that it is impossible to change. You are what you are. Even positive labels can be harmful. I tell parents, for example, never praise children for being smart. Praise them instead for working hard. When you tell children they're smart, they become more performance-oriented and assume that intelligence cannot be improved. If they start to struggle with a new task, they may feel not smart and give up. If you praise children for working hard, when they come up against a difficult task, they will persist because they work hard. Fortune-telling ants. Don't listen to these lying ants. Fortune-telling ants think they can see what is going to happen in the future, but all they really do is think of bad stuff that makes you upset. They creep into your mind and predict the future with fear. Of course, it is helpful to prepare for potential problems, but if you spend all your time focusing on fearful future, you will be filled with anxiety. Marcus's anxiety was driven by his fortune-telling ants, such as, I will fail school, I will never go to college, I will be a failure. Other examples of the thoughts from this deceiver include, nothing will ever be, quote, normal after the pandemic. Everything will be worse. I am doomed to be unemployed for years. Inflation is never going to come down. I'm going to get sick and die. I'll become homeless. My children will also have mental illness. I'll die without him. I will give my presentation. If I give my presentation, I'll have a panic attack. None of my investments will pay off. I'll look stupid when I talk. I won't be able to buy a house. I'll never exercise again. I'll never be good at public speaking. My friend killed himself. I'm doomed. My kids will get a better dad if I die. That's some heavy words right there, folks. I hope you understand what's going down with them. Predicting the worst in a situation causes an immediate rise in heart rate, breathing rates, and can make you feel anxious. It can trigger cravings for sugar or refined carbs and make you feel as if you need to eat to calm your anxiety. What makes fortune-telling ants even worse is that your mind is so powerful that it can make what you imagine happen. When you think you will sprain your ankle, for example, that thought may deactivate the cerebellum, making you more clumsy and likely to get hurt. Similarly, if you are convinced you won't get a good night's sleep, find a new relationship, you will be less likely to engage in the behaviors that will make it so. Mind-reading ants. These ants are convinced they could see into someone else's mind and know how others think and feel without being told. They say things like, everyone thinks I'm stupid, or they are laughing at me. When you're sure you know what others are thinking, even though they have not told you and you have not asked them, you are feeding your mind-reading ants. When Marcus told me my teachers hate me, he was allowing these ants to torture him. I have 25 years of education and I can't tell what anyone else is thinking unless they tell me. A glance in your direction doesn't mean somebody is talking about you or mad at you. I tell people that a negative look from someone else may mean nothing more than he or she is constipated. You just don't know. I teach all my patients the 18-40-60 rule, which says that when you are 18, you're worried about what other people think of you. When you're 40, you don't care what other people think of you. And whenever you're 60, you realize no one has been thinking about you at all. People spend their days worrying and thinking about themselves, not about you. Stop trying to read their minds. Examples include, my dad thinks I'm weak. My boss doesn't like me. People think I'm fearful for wearing a mask in public. My friends think I won't be able to keep up with them on our hike. My father thinks I'll never amount to much. People think I'm dumb. People think I'm being treated for depression to get attention. People at work don't care about me. I can die and people won't care. Everyone is disappointed in me. My mom doesn't think I measure up compared to my siblings. I frustrate all the people who know me. My wife would rather be with someone else. My pastor doesn't care about me. He thinks everyone else is an idiot. Blaming ants. When Marcus said it's my parents' fault for not letting me quit, he was allowing blaming ants to take hold in his brain. Blaming ants always sing the same old sad song. He did it, she did it, it's not my fault, it's your fault. These ants don't want you to admit your mistakes and learn how to fix them and make them right. They want you to be a victim, and of all the ants, blaming ants are most toxic. I call them red ants because they not only steal your happiness but also drain you of your personal power. When you blame something or someone else for the problems in your life, you become a victim of circumstances who can't do anything to change the situation. Blame also starts a dangerous downhill slide that goes something like this. Blame others, it's your fault. Sees life as beyond personal control. My life would be better if I weren't for fill in the blank. Feels like a victim of circumstances. If only that hadn't happened then. Gives up trying. Nothing ever will go right for me. Why try? And I can guarantee y'all can put the pictures into place of where that goes. It is a dangerous road to go down, and I myself have been on it. Blaming others temporarily rids yourself of feelings of guilt or responsibility. However, it also reinforces the idea that life is out of your control and that others can determine how life goes for you. Psychiatrists have known for some time that the patients who do the worst in psychotherapy are the ones who take no personal responsibility for getting better. In fact, as early as Freud, 1927, a major goal of psychotherapy has been increasing patients' sense of personal responsibility. Dr. Carl Rogers went so far as to develop a, quote, personal responsibility scale to predict those who would get better with treatment and those who would not. Be honest and ask yourself if you have tendency to say things like, it's their fault that the coronavirus kept spreading. It's your fault I failed because you didn't do enough to help me. It's not my fault I eat too much. My mom taught me to clean my plate. I'm having trouble meeting this deadline because the client keeps changing his mind. I'm miserable and it's all his fault. My girlfriend didn't call me on time and now it's too late to go to that movie I wanted to see. She ruined my night. My husband did not protect me from the bad decision I made at work. It's my boss's fault I did not get promoted. It's my child's fault. It's the teacher's fault my child is failing. It wasn't my fault that I wasn't prepared for the meeting. They never gave me enough notes. That wouldn't have happened if you had been better to me. How was I supposed to know the boss wanted the reports in 2 days? He should have told me. If it was so important, why didn't you remind me? That's not my job. And yes, I'm talking to myself because that second to last one, I'm guilty of myself. So I'm not just saying this for y'all, I'm saying it for me. Beginning a sentence with, it's your fault that I can ruin your life. Blaming ants make you a victim, and when you're a victim, you are powerless to change your behavior. Less than ants are some of the most toxic ants to your self-esteem. Whenever you compare yourself to others in a negative way, these ants harass and attack you. They are involved in the epidemic rise of teenage depression and suicide, all exacerbated by social media. Many teens spend hours a day comparing their lives and the way they look to a false sense of others. Parents can also put unrealistic expectations and pressure on the children to live up to those on the internet. Marcus's comment that I'm not as smart as other kids is a classic example of a less than thinking. Less than ants are easy to identify because, like Marcus's statement, they usually start with words I am not. I am not good enough. I am not good enough, a good enough mother or father. I'm not good enough son or daughter. I'm not good enough wife or husband. Boss or employee. Christian, investor, not smart enough, not rich enough, not tall enough, not strong enough, not pretty enough, not funny enough, not kind enough. And I could go on. If you continually compare yourself to others, you'll have lower self-esteem and you'll be bitter. If you compete to be your best self, you will be better. The problem is often we comparing our behind-the-scenes self with other people's highlight reel. When I was a young psychiatrist, just out of my training, I noticed that people who looked like they had it all together, great marriage, perfect children, careers, etc., often would be in my office telling me about the troubles such as a gambling addiction, extramarital affairs, and children who were stealing. I met parents with criminal records, a priest who no longer believed in God, and so on. It was such an important lesson. Few people are who they show to the outside world. I've had the honor of treating U.S. senators, Oscar-winning and Emmy-winning actors, Hall of Fame athletes, Grammy-winning musicians, business leaders, and megachurch pastors. These wonderful people all had the same issues and insecurities as the rest of us. When you allow less than ants to steal your happiness, you stop celebrating your wins. You come to resent the people you love, and you feel envious of those others succeed. If only, and I'll be happy when ants. I once heard Byron Katie tell an audience, "Whenever you argue with reality, welcome to hell." I have shared that line many a times with my patients. Spending time in regret for things in your past cannot change leads only to pain and ongoing frustration. Regret manifests in if only thinking patterns for what occurred, and I'll be happy when for regrets in the present you hope will change in the future. Each of these phrases ensures self-defeating thoughts because they take you out of the present moment. The other side of regret is unhappiness with the present, hoping for a different future. In Marcus's case, he thought of all his problems could have been avoided if he hadn't changed schools. Other examples of these happiness-stealing ants include, if only I had sold my stocks before the economy tanked. If only my parents had been rich. If only I were taller, skinnier, prettier. If only I had stayed in school. If only I hadn't made that mistake. If only I had stopped drinking earlier. I'll be happier when I retire. I'll be happier when he or she agrees to marry me. I'll be happier when our divorce is finalized. I'll be happier when I have children. I'll be happier when the children are grown and out of my hair. I'll be happier when I graduate from college. I'll be happier when I land that promotion or when I lose 10 pounds. Left unchecked, these ants will ruin your relationship, your self-esteem, and eventually your life. The good news is you can learn to eliminate ants and replace them with more helpful thoughts and give you more accurate, fair assessment of any situation. I'm not talking about positive thinking that ignores reality. I'm talking about accurate, honest thinking. We'll talk more about how to do this in the next chapter, but rest assured, with a bit of practice, you can learn how to squash your ants and lead to a happier, healthier life. Now that, folks, concludes Chapter 1. There's a lot to think about, and I understand that it's over a half an hour long, but I encourage you to rewatch that again. And I also encourage you to get yourself a copy of this so that you can follow along as we're reading. And that's called Conquer Your Negative Thoughts by Daniel G. Amen, medical doctor. And I encourage you to read it for yourself as well. Take notes, and also highlight a few things. So folks, I asked if you enjoyed what you heard, tune in tomorrow for the next chapter. I ask that you hit up my PayPal if you want to continue seeing these videos and hearing from the Word of God, and also deep truths that is now going to be a thing. Also, I encourage you to like and subscribe, not only the video, but also the channel, because I need a bigger audience, folks. We need to get the word out that things are coming, good things are coming, and that Christ is on the throne, because if God be lifted up, nothing can stand. If you have a prayer request that you don't want nobody to know, hit up my email. It's in the description of the video and also in my bio. If you want everybody to pray for you, put it in the comments. Questions, put them in the comments, hit up the email, whatever you want to do. Let's have the conversation. I appreciate those that have given so far, and rest assured that is going to my ministry and other ministries alike. I keep nothing for myself. God forbid, at least, I enter into the realm of greed, and I don't want to do that nonsense. So until we meet again, folks, stay safe, stay blessed, and as always, stay in the shadow of the Almighty. This is your old Uncle Jason, signing off.